Welcome to Inside the Creative Mind, where passion meets purpose and creativity takes center stage. Each episode features powerful conversations with musicians, artists, writers, and creators, sharing the stories, struggles, and breakthroughs behind their craft. Now, let's welcome your host, Brian Jones.
Hey everybody, we are back. It's season 2. I'm Brian Jones, and this is Inside the Creative Mind podcast. Today's guest is California artist Marisa Madison, the creative force behind Made by Marisa. Her work moves from canvases and richly textured paintings to murals and large-scale custom creations, all brought to life through bold color and an unmistakable sense of joy. But painting may be only one layer of Marisa's creative story. She also appears to explore music and travel, motherhood, and the challenges of turning a deeply personal creative instinct into work that transforms other people's spaces. Today, we're going inside Marisa's creative mind to discover where those ideas begin. Marisa, welcome to Inside the Creative Mind.
Brian, I'm happy to be here. I think what you're doing with this podcast is really cool, and I'm genuinely excited to be a part of it.
Well, I'm thrilled to have you for 2 reasons. So first, I want to talk about all you, but primarily I want to talk about this shirt. Now, everybody at home can't see it, but since you're an artist, I wanted to get your feedback. So my wife, and I don't know if you do this for your husband, we'll talk about it, but my wife buys me shirts occasionally. I don't want her to, but she finds it necessary to improve my appearance for some reason. So she bought me this shirt and she said, "This color is really you." I don't know what that means. I'm going to let you explain it to me. But I put it on this morning. It's the first time I've wore it. And I thought, okay, I'll try it for Marisa's segment. And I'm going to steal a line from Superbad. It kind of feels like she bought it from Baby Gap. It fits really tight. And I'm too old. I'm 58 years old. I was like, I can't wear that type of shirt. And she goes, just wear it. It'll be a big hit. So I don't want to put you on the spot, but you're an artist. Does this color offend you as an artist?
Absolutely not. I think it really is your color.
Okay.
It complements your complexion, your skin tone, your hair.
Okay.
I mean, there really are some colors that will just totally wash you out. A lot of people can't wear yellow, even though I love yellow. It's very difficult to pull off a yellow without just looking like you're up.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I feel better now. And so next week, my chair will be white. We're switching to a white chair so that different colors show up better than the black chair. We're retiring the black chair after this episode. So I'm going to miss it. Yeah, but that's okay. So enough about me and my shirt. I really want to get into the origins of you because this podcast is about you, not my shirt. But hey, again, I'm thrilled to have, and we always love having fresh faces on the show. And you caught our eye. We get hundreds of people asking to be on the show, and we're really selective about personality. We think who could really carry a show, and we think you're that person. So don't let me down. No pressure.
I'll try.
That's all right. So you've been creating art from a pretty young age, and I'm always fascinated whether you're a musician or an artist. How did that start? How did it evolve? And how did that journey begin?
Well, some kids were in sports, gymnastics, dance. My parents signed me up for art class when I was 6. And every Saturday I would go to this beautiful little studio filled with kids and paint and pastels and just get to explore and create. And I never looked back. I did it for the rest of forever.
Well, it's funny because I don't know how school was. You're younger than me, but when I was in school, we had art class. It was kind of like mandatory. You took art, whatever. And I had this creepy old art teacher. He had kind of this comb over, and when he'd lean over your shoulder to look at your work, his comb over would kind of fall down into whatever you were drawing, and then he would give his critique on it. But somehow I took that music path rather than art like you did. But did your parents recognize something in you, and they said, Marisa's really good at art? It's not like a Crayola picture they hung on the fridge that was terrible, but your parents said, "This is so good, Marisa. We love it. We're going to hang it up there."
Sure. I always gravitated towards it. And as a toddler, I'd be grabbing the crayons and was just interested in doing it. Now I try to encourage my sons, and they're not interested at all. They humor me by picking stuff up, but
Yeah.
I always loved it. So yeah, I think they did. They recognized that in me, and then figured that a class would be a good way. It's when my little sister was born, I think they were probably just trying to find ways to get me out of the house and deal with having 2 children, so they
Yeah.
signed me for the art class, but it was something I had been interested in. Also, my mom is an artist, my grandmother was an artist. Art has always been a part of our lives. We went to museums and talked about art. I had Eric Carle children's books with
Hmm.
his, collage art, and so it was always a part of my family's life too, so
Did
the art
your
class is natural.
did your mother or grandmother give you tips, advice back when you were younger? Did they suggest things to you when you were either like a rebel, like, I'm not going to do it that way, or did you embrace that?
No, my memory of that as a child is more painting alongside them and them having materials just available for me to explore with. They left the teaching up to my class and
I
my teacher
gotcha.
most.
That's interesting. So you're kind of known, and if, when I look through your Instagram page, I see all of this bold color and texture. There's one image on there where you like kind of did a whole room, and so you're kind of known for transforming, I guess I would say, ordinary spaces, even large scale work. So what first drew you to like the color and texture side of it?
I think I just always liked it.
Hmm.
Ever since I was little, walking through the art museums, I was more drawn to the impressionist wing than I was the hyper realistic, sitting there. I'm amazed and can fully appreciate what those artists do when you're sitting there trying to figure out, did they paint that or is that a photograph? But
Yeah.
if I'm looking for art to hang on my wall, I want something that is unmistakably made out of paint that's just got globs of texture and movement. And it's almost like the artist leaves a little piece of them behind in that chunk.
Yeah, I think it's neat. This past weekend, my son and I went on a fishing trip, and we were at it wasn't like roughing it. It was like a really nice,
Mm,
luxurious cabin. And then
nice.
we fished for an hour, and then we hung out in the luxurious cabin for the most of the weekend. But there was this beautiful painting on the wall that they had staged in this beautiful home. And we looked at it for hours and didn't really notice until we got to the side of the painting from a different view that it probably had a half inch of texture that made
Cool.
the painting look completely different from that angle. And so we were fascinated by how we didn't notice it looking straight on.
Cool.
But when you paint, and I'm not an artist, so you're going to have to explain this to me. Does color or texture usually come first when you're thinking about this design?
Color comes first for sure, and then the texture is the result of color on top of color on top of color on top of color.
Hmm.
It's
Does
just layers and layers.
does the texture help you express something that the color alone or a flat canvas cannot?
Exactly like you were just describing in that room with your son, I think it's a whole extra element to it. It's this dimension that isn't there on a super flat piece or a print or a photograph.
Yeah.
Makes you wanna reach out and touch it. It's alive somehow.
It really is. I mean, we looked at it and we were almost like, "This is amazing." My son even took a picture of it and sent it
Cool.
to his wife, who's like a novice painter, and said, "Look at the depth of this texture." But
Yeah.
yeah, it's crazy how you don't and I wonder, because in this age of social media, which I hate social media just as a whole. It's okay, and I don't care to say that because I post things to support artists, whether it's
Mm,
musicians, and I just freeball it. I don't really know how to do social media. We
mm.
we gained about 1,000 followers, legit 1,000 followers last season, and I think we'll
Wild.
do better this season because people relate to kind of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
But from a social media aspect, you're painting and you've created this work and you're trying to share it, right? In some capacity because you want to bring attention to it. But
Mm.
you really can't embrace the texture unless you really
Mhm.
do that with you have some kind of elite
Mhm.
camera. So have you
True.
thought about, I've seen so many artists on Instagram where pan in and they look at the texture and they have all these $1 million cameras, but most of us don't have that equipment. But
Yeah.
how do you kind of express that when you're sharing it to the world, maybe through TikTok or Instagram? I don't get it.
Yeah. It's so hard.
Is
Honestly,
it?
I think there's a huge element of my art that's lost
Yeah.
on. And they're so it's frustrating because I'll have a piece in front of me that I'm like, "Oh, this is so great," and that I can't photograph
Yeah.
it. And also I still will, and I'll still share it, but I'm messaging the customer on the side being like, "Well, here's the picture and of the picture, and it's coming, but I promise when you get it in person, you're gonna like it even more."
Yeah. It's
There's
hard to
something lost.
share because it's like
Yeah,
a picture of a picture and then it gets diminished
totally.
and
The
kinda
energy is lost.
yeah, the
Yeah.
clarity is not there.
Yeah.
So you kinda work on everything from large canvases to smaller studies, if you will. How does your mindset change between the 2 formats when you're thinking about that process and creativity?
Honestly, it doesn't really.
Mm,
I was thinking about this the other day. It it's almost like starting a new book.
mm,
You know, you have the anticipation of like, "Ooh, what's this story gonna be about?" The
mhm,
process of reading the words of each book is the same, but the feeling and the journey of the along the way is completely different.
mm,
So, I mean, each piece is its own unique thing, and it doesn't really matter if it's a huge wall or a pair of shoes. I have the same sort of anticipation and excitement when I sit down with a
very
blank
much.
thing in front of me, and I'm like, "Okay, cool, like,
Yeah,
what are we gonna do?" And then there's the process, like the reading of the words, like the gathering of the reference pictures and getting the palette together and the fundamentals, but the the magic and the process and the fun of it doesn't really change
I see.
depending on what it is that you're painting
Now,
and what the is.
I was scrolling through that's helpful for me to kinda put it in perspective. I was scrolling through different things, and one project that you did kind of involved nearly like a 12-foot wide beach scene across like 3 separate textured paintings. And that kinda
Mm,
suggests to me that you're comfortable thinking beyond a single conventional canvas.
mm.
Do you think about, "Hey, this is gonna take 3 canvases for what I wanna do," or do you start painting and go, "Wow, I'm gonna have to expand on this?" I guess I'm thinking, is that pre-planned?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
That piece is special. That one was the first one that I did that I really sat down and spent time doing after I took this little break of not painting for a
Mhm,
while after becoming a mother. And we bought this house and it was furnished already, and a lot of the stuff that they left behind was their art on their walls, and it was this 5-piece canvas already printed with this black and white butterfly thing, and I was just it was in the it's huge, and it's in the middle of the living room, and it's perfect for the wall, and so
mhm,
I didn't like the piece, so I just painted over it. So
mm,
in that case, I did. I knew I had a 5 canvas thing that I wanted to fill, and I sat down and I sketched it out and I laid it out. To answer your question, yes, I usually have a plan. I usually will sit down with a pencil in a sketchbook and put the concept down roughly to get kind of an idea of the composition in my head before I just sit down and start creating. I think it's easier for me to have a plan going into it. I'm not one of those artists that just sits down and creates spontaneously.
yeah,
But then there is a spontaneity along the way. It always turns out a little different than you think it's going to, but
yeah.
there's usually a plan at the
There's
beginning.
certainly spontaneity in anything I've ever painted because I majority of what I'm painting is a mistake, and then I have to change the whole plan. I'm like, "It's not a dolphin, this is now a shark," because
Yes.
I put a splotch somewhere where it shouldn't go. But do you feel like the larger pieces bring more freedom, or do they add more pressure? They're so big and immense. I mean, you talk about 3 canvases over
Yeah.
12 foot long.
There are pros and cons to both.
Mm,
The bigger pieces are easier to get that big emotion, that big wow. You can get a lot of little detail in it because you're working on a big canvas, whereas, like, if you're trying to get a face and an expression on a face on a piece on, like, a shoe that's
mhm.
this big, the
Yeah,
face has gotta be this big,
right.
and how are you gonna get that expression on that face? But if you're working on a huge canvas, your face gets to be this big, and you have so much more to
Yeah.
work with and play with, and that is easier. But the shoe is fun because you can get it done in a couple hours,
Yeah.
and you can be more playful and just it's not as much of a commitment. It doesn't
Hmm.
take multiple days or weeks or, I
Yeah.
can just put this one out and create some content for social media or whatever.
That's interesting. So last night, you and I did a little sound check. Well, it was kind of yesterday afternoon. And a couple of your sons jumped into the picture, which I thought was funny. And that happens to me all the time, as we were talking about yesterday. But a lot of the things, and men can't really relate to this. So this is for all the mothers out there listening. But when you're a mother, and fathers too, to a certain extent, but for motherhood, you have to pause sometimes in life, right? You have to pause, and sometimes that's a substantial pause depending on your situation. But you
Mhm.
kind of have to pause your personal hobbies, I guess, if you will. I know I certainly did when my son was born. I was literally 22 years old when he was born. I was wearing zebra spandex pants with long hair, gyrating on stage in the 80s, late 80s. And then my wife was like, "Hey, I'm pregnant." And all of that stopped. I mean, we just put the band up, and I became a dad, and I got a factory job back then. But you've talked about rediscovering your creativity after motherhood. How has that
Mm.
changed your relationship with art, or has it?
It's completely changed my relationship with art. In a good way, though, it has made me appreciate it and not take it for granted. When I was a kid or, young adult before I had children, I could just bury myself in the basement of the art building and just
Mhm.
be gone for hours and hours and days and just get totally burnt out with it, to be honest with you. By the time I left, I was just exhausted and I was kind of like, I'd have to hype myself back up to go back in and pick it back up and do it again. Whereas now it feels like this precious little me time, like stolen moments where they're all out of the house. And I'm like, oh, cool. Like I can sit down and create for a couple hours.
Yeah.
And there's something about the getting interrupted in the middle of it that helps you stay in the flow and give you this itch or this craving to get back to it.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're exhausted when you leave it, you kind of, like I said, have to hype yourself back up to sit back down and get back into the work.
Mm,
It's now it feels like less work and more just
mm,
fun,
mm.
you
It's
know?
it's almost to me when because I took a big hiatus for years, and then my wife brought home this. I didn't know any now. Like, I'm a master recording person now, but I shouldn't have said that. It sounds very condescending. But for years, I didn't know anything about, because music changed from 1987 to 2016. It was
Sure,
completely
yeah.
digital. So I had to relearn everything. But she bought me this little recording equipment, and she said, "You need to go record all these songs that you've written since you were 16." And I was like, "I'm going to."
Wow.
And so I think it was a reset button. And I think that's kind of what you just described with your
Mm,
art. But it was a
mhm.
reset button that came with appreciation, because
Yes.
now you appreciate your craft more, as do I. And we were talking off camera, like, this isn't my full-time gig. I just enjoy it. I enjoy
Yeah.
meeting and learning about painting, or music, or whoever I'm interviewing. And so I think we can both share that process. So you mentioned that every painting reaching a stage where you hate it before it finally comes
Every
together.
single one. Mhm.
Can you talk about that? Because music's similar, but I mean, with painting, how did you learn not to panic, I guess, during that stage where you're like, this is trash, I'm going to throw it away and start all over, but then something makes you move forward? How does that work in your mind?
I think it's probably just been years of desensitization and realizing over and over again, "Oh, this is what that is." Like, just recognizing the phase for what it is. Now I'm like, I'm totally unfazed by it, and I just see it as the underpainting, and I'm
Mhm.
working in a space where people are constantly coming and going. I find myself, like, hovering over my work saying, "Don't judge it by its underpainting. It's ugly right now, but it's gonna be beautiful." Like,
Yeah.
it's just the base layers, and you've gotta build it up, and you've gotta work it out, and starts with just splotches of color that get refined and refined and refined and refined. So, it's gonna look ugly. It's going to,
Mhm.
because it's its base layer.
Yeah.
It's just not there yet.
That's funny, because I'll be doing, like, some backup harmonies, and I'm just recording that, and my wife will go, I don't know what you're doing, but scrap that idea because that sounds ridiculous. And I'm like, you don't know.
In my
You
head, I
don't
can see
know
it.
what I'm doing. Wait till I'm done. And she's like, that's terrible. And I'm like, just wait,
100%.
please.
Yes, yes, or someone would be like, "Are you sure, like, that should be there?" And I'm like, "Well, it's not gonna be exactly there. Eventually, it'll be covered up with other stuff." But
They're like, "Is
anyways,
that
it's
a flower?" And the other thing, I was talking to Haley Jazeri, who's an artist that
Yeah, I
came on her
listened to that episode, and
yeah,
I
she's
follow her.
so funny.
Fantastic.
She's really
Yeah.
funny. But she's talking about, like, how she'll paint something and then she'll show it to someone, a family member first, maybe to get some bounce back feedback. And they're like, "That is the most beautiful daffodil I've ever seen." And she's like, "It's a sunflower." And I think it's because people interpret those things
Oh,
differently.
yeah.
Do you get that? Like,
Yeah.
does your husband walk in when you're in the middle of something and he's like, "Oh my god, that's the most beautiful cheetah I've ever seen." And you're like, "That's not a cheetah."
Him and we've come to an understanding where he doesn't comment until I ask his opinion.
I know that deal.
And
I know that.
and he is not judging it on its base layer.
Okay. So he's learned his lesson.
He sure has,
Well, I
yes.
appreciate that.
But he's also one of my best and one of my most honest critics.
Yeah.
He will tell me, like, if he doesn't like it or if there's something
Yeah.
slightly off, and he is cool because he's not an artist per se, but he's got a good eye, so he'll be able to say, like, "There's just something off," but he
Yeah.
can't say what. And
Right.
but when I do get that seal from him of,
Mhm.
like, "Oh, cool, like, this one's good," then I
Yeah.
feel extra, like, "Okay, like,
Yeah.
it's good."
Right.
Thank you.
No, I totally understand where you're coming from. Lisa, that's my wife's name. She's my biggest critic, and yeah, it's tough to get a thumbs up from Lisa, I'll tell you this, 'cause she knows music pretty well, so to get one from her, I'm like, "I'm validated. I am validated."
Yeah, it feels good, and
Yeah.
more often than not, when he's telling me that there's something off, I know that there's something
Yeah.
off. I want him to lie to me and say, "It's great," but
Yeah.
I know there's something off, and it's nice to have somebody that will be sincere
Yeah.
and make you better for it,
It's funny
holds me.
because our parents, and you probably know this being an artist majority of your life, they always say positive things. It doesn't
Mm.
matter how terrible it is. They're like, "Oh, Marisa, that is so
You're
perfect.
amazing.
You're
It's gonna
so
be
good."
fantastic. I know.
And then you post it and you get like 2 likes, and you're like, "What?
Yeah.
Mom, I don't know if you were spot on there."
Yeah. No, you gotta have those honest critics in your life. My mother is one of those. She always has
Mhm.
been. Since I was little, of bringing home my art from that art class on Saturdays, I'd show it to her, and she'd be like, "This one's fantastic. It's going on the wall." And other times she'd be like, this is not my
Yeah.
favorite,"
Yeah.
and it would hurt my feelings, but when I look back, I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Now I know she's always telling me the truth, and she still to this day will do that with my art. Like, it's
Yeah.
not my favorite.
I
It's not
think that's
personal.
good. I mean, we gotta have thick skin in this industry,
Yeah.
well, no matter what you're doing, where you want other people to see your work.
Yeah.
I wanna switch gears a little bit on some other things that you and I have talked about. So you mentioned the podcast, the telepathy tapes, I think I'm saying that right. Specifically, the episode, "The Consciousness of Creativity."
Yes.
Are ideas alive and do they choose us? What about that conversation resonated with you? And you can talk about the podcast or whatever, but fill us in because I think that's important.
Well, first, if you're listening to this, you're probably a podcast person, and I cannot recommend enough that one. It's fascinating. It deals with all sorts of different topics. That one in particular talked about the consciousness of creativity, and it explored the idea of creativity being an entity or a force outside of ourselves, something that we can tap into, like the artist as an antenna that receives inspiration from creativity outside of themselves. Or is it something internal that we bring forth out of ourselves? So it talked about how the Greeks worshipped the muses, and they had gods that inspired art and literature, music. They built museums to honor them. And the Romans had something called a genius, which was a spirit that lived in your home on your property, and it inspired families. And if families lived in the same place for multiple generations, then it would be thought, that family has a genius for music or a genius for art. And it was because the genius of their land was inspiring them, not that they were being passed down genetically, generationally from person to person, but that it was coming from some sort of outside force. And then somewhere along the way, it became internalized and it became the I am the genius and the genius is me. And the difference between those thoughts, I think, is fascinating in that it completely changes the way that you approach the process of your art. Are you sitting down with something as a collaborator, or are you sitting down and is it all on your shoulders? Like, what am I gonna make from this? What am I gonna do? And personally, I find it a lot more fun to think about it as a collaboration and something that I can engage with and meditate and speak to and play
Yeah.
with.
Well, that sounds like a really well done podcast. They're probably not just coming on talking about their shirt like some other
No, your shirt
podcasts.
is fantastic.
Oh, well, anyway, so I appreciate that. So I'm going to go check that out because I haven't done it yet. I told you I was
It's
going
cool.
to,
It's fascinating.
and
Really
and
cool.
I will. I promise. So we found you scrolling through social media. Actually, my wife did, and she's like, "I like this person. Let's reach out." And I was like, "Yes, let's do it." She finds most people,
Hmm,
but building an audience online. You've also talked about finding success on social media. Have you learned about connecting with people online as an artist? I know the podcast, like today, what you're doing is one way to do that. And we're
sure.
going to get the message out, and you'll have this podcast forever,
Oh,
eternity.
yay.
It'll be out there, and you can look back 5 years and go, I wish I would have said this. I do
Oh,
that with every
man.
episode. But it stays out there. And believe it or not, thousands of people will eventually listen to this podcast and they might get something out of it. But what is
It's
building it?
mind-blowing.
Yeah, it is. What was building an audience something that came naturally to you, or are you gradually figuring this out as you go?
I'm figuring it out as I go, but it's also coming natural. I've found really that you get back what you put out.
Mm,
I love to just get on my feed and scroll through and see what different artists are posting and creating, and I just love to unabashedly celebrate them and
mhm,
repost. I'm not stingy with my follows. I'll comment, I'll just to say what you're doing is fantastic because it is. It's so
yeah,
cool that you're bravely creating and sharing, and more often than not, they'll notice that I have said something or reposted, and then they'll hop over to my page and they'll
yeah,
reciprocate. And it really has just been very organic, joyful growth. And I have made some really cool connections. I've got a new pen pal in France that I
mhm,
communicate with really regularly. And
yeah.
it's like I've found this friend on the other side of the world that I would have never have met. I've, yeah, I found a lot of joy with it. It's been fun.
I think that's great, and what we try to do, and in my strategy, I don't know if it's a top secret, like I'm sure other people thought of the same thing. It's not revolutionary, but when we reach out, and it's like we do try to build this community, and I will constantly look for people that have been on the show and go see what they're up to now.
Mhm.
Because I might have them back, maybe something major's changed in their life. But I
Yeah.
like people that actually don't just talk about themselves and promote themselves, but just like you said, they'll go back and they'll go, "Hey, I wonder what so and so's doing,"
Oh, yeah.
and I'll throw them some love, and I try to do
Mm.
that. Like I'll say something on your post, but just as much as I would say something to you, I might say something from somebody from last season, and I think
Mhm.
that's the genuine co connection that we're looking for. Um,
Absolutely.
it doesn't matter
And
to me
and
how many followers you have. It's who you're
yeah, well,
engaging
and
with.
it's almost better if you don't. It's if I've found it much easier to connect with the real people that have a couple hundred or a couple thousand followers. Like, if you're commenting, reposting, celebrating the people that are already famous and have
Mhm.
hundreds of thousands, you're getting lost in the noise.
Yeah.
They don't even notice you, you
No,
know?
at
But
all.
if you yeah, no, so it's
Yeah.
much more authentic to just find those real people
Mhm.
like your wife is doing, which is really cool.
Yeah,
Really cool.
no, I do it too. Don't give her all the credit. I'm just saying she found you and she brought you to my attention, and I'm like, "Yeah, no, like, she's gonna
Oh.
be good." So you also, when you talk about the business side of this, and it's
Mm,
always great if we make money doing something we love. But you
right.
mentioned becoming a yes person. I've heard you talk about this before, while also learning to say no is okay when it doesn't come from fear. How do you develop that? How did you develop that mindset?
Somewhere along the line, I just took a look at my life and myself, and I realized how many things I had done or hadn't done because of fear or
Mhm.
for coming from a place of fear. And I didn't like that about myself. So I think it was a New Year's resolution one year. I was like, I'm going to start saying yes. I'm going to be less of an introvert. I'm going to say yes. And I did that for a while. And then I just burnt myself out and found myself doing all these things that I genuinely didn't want to do just for the sake of saying yes.
Mhm.
And so I refined it a little and I gave myself the caveat of like, okay, if it's a knee-jerk no, I'm gonna sit with it for a second, and I'm gonna ask myself, is it a no because I'm genuinely not interested and I don't wanna do it?
Mhm.
Or is it a no because I'm feeling a little nervous about this? And honestly, this podcast is exactly an example of that. When I
Yeah.
first got your message, I was immediately like, "No." Like, I
Yeah.
can't do a podcast. Like,
Mhm.
what am I gonna say? I literally have not spoken a single word on my Instagram page, and now here I am having an hour-long conversation with you. It's
Oh, yeah.
crazy.
Don't
But I am a podcast person. I love podcasts. Whenever
Yeah.
if I'm painting, 9 times out of 10, I'm listening to podcasts, and I love having conversations like this.
Mhm.
I think this is interesting. So I sat with it and I realized, yes, this is a situation in which my no is coming from fear
Yeah.
and not being comfortable. And so I forced myself to do it. And, 9 times out of 10, again, when I do make myself do it, it'll open a door or
Mhm.
lead to a connection, or it'll end up being a more enjoyable experience than I thought it was gonna be. And
I have a
it's been good.
suggestion because this podcast is going so well today. I'm gonna encourage you to have your own podcast one.
Oh, goodness.
No, seriously, I've been doing this for years and years on different podcasts and interviewing people. I do it for a living at work too. But what I find fascinating is you have, and I've told other people this, I don't tell everybody this, but you have this ability to communicate very well, very calmly. You understand what you're talking about in your craft. And I think with the community that you've built around you, if you ever had time where you wanted to do that, that'd be something you should consider because it really doesn't cost anything to have a podcast, and you can have whoever you want on, and you could
Yeah.
talk about whatever you want, and you'd be really damn good at it.
Well, that's such a nice compliment. Thank
Yeah,
you.
just
Thank you so
keep that in
much.
mind. If you become famous, please remember me. I gotta watch our time because this stuff goes by so fast, and I'm sitting here talking, and I'm like, so I'm gonna skip ahead,
Okay.
and I wanna talk about some other things and expressly teaching and sharing your
Mm.
creativity.
Mhm.
You've explored murals and
Mhm.
canvases and teaching art. How has teaching influenced your own creativity? Now, you don't have a comb over like my art teacher, but how has teaching really influenced your
Oh.
own thoughts?
We must give your art teacher some grace because what I have
Good man.
realized
He was a good man.
is that
Clearly, if
it
he's
isn't.
listening, if he's probably not alive anymore. It was like 8. But he was a good man. His name was Mr. Guy. I'm just gonna throw it
Oh
his name
my
was Mr. Guy,
god.
so, I mean, he was the
I had a Mrs. Olson, yep,
yeah,
and she taught the exact same lesson every single year
yeah,
for every single grade. Anyways, what I've really learned is that it is way, way easier, at least for me,
mm,
to create art than it is to teach it.
yeah,
I find myself constantly fighting the urge to just, like, grab a paintbrush and start painting his painting,
yes,
and I so much of the process is intuitive,
mm,
and it's really hard to communicate that to somebody else. Like I'll say, "Hey, I think it would be really cool if you put a highlight in this area." And he'll say, "Oh, okay, cool." And then he'll grab a completely different color than I would have and make a much bigger mark than I would have.
mm,
And I'm like, my first instinct is like, "Oh, like I was thinking this," but then I have to say, "Oh no, like this is his painting, this is his vision, this is what that was the highlight that
yeah,
he saw." So I'm still learning. I'm balancing that. I only have the one student once a week, and
yeah,
so it's been very informal, and I'm able to just kind of like my grandma and my mom did with me, just sit beside him and paint
mhm.
with him and kind of give him suggestions here and
It
there.
sounds like you were teaching me because I'd probably be the most frustrating student you could possibly have, but
Well, and a lot of times he'll say, "Thanks for the suggestion, but no thanks, I don't wanna do that." And I'm
yeah,
like, "Oh,
yeah,
okay."
oh, well, here's your money back. Thanks for stopping by. I'm the teacher. So so we are at that closing mark, and I know I had a lot more I wanted to talk to you about. Maybe we can have you back and go over the rest of my 50 questions one day. I have so many. But one of the closing questions I asked everybody that comes on the show, Marisa, is what do you hope people feel when they experience your work for the very first time?
I just want it to bring them joy. I want it to put a smile on their face. I want to leave the world more beautiful than it needs to be. I want to
Mhm,
put art on everything and surprise places. On a pair of shoes that are old and yucky now, all of a sudden they're Halloween shoes. I
mhm.
wanted a big empty wall to be a mural. I want to just make the world beautiful and bring people joy.
Well, I think you're doing that every day. There's a reason we had you on the show because you have that glow, if you will.
Yeah.
Until next time, be kind,
All right.
be creative, and be the reason someone believes there's still good in the world. You voted, I think there was a bunch of people that voted on my
Hey, I
closing
like that
segment.
one.
Yeah, and so that's what we're gonna close with, but I wanna
Cool.
I wanna thank you so much for taking time to get up early. It's 8 a.m. where you're at when we started. I really appreciate your time. I really love what you're doing. Ladies and gentlemen, please go out and check out Marisa's Instagram page where we found her, Marisa
Thank you, Brian.
Madison. She's
Yes.
great. She's a fun person. She's got a great personality. Thank you so much for being on the
Um,
show today, Marisa.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been truly an honor and fun, really surprisingly fun.
We are fired up for season 2, and thank
Yay!
you for helping us open it. Appreciate it.
Yay! Season 2.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to Inside the Creative Mind with Brian Jones. Keep exploring, keep creating, and don't forget to tune in for the next 30 minutes of inspiration streaming on all platforms. Your next spark of creativity is just a play button away.